we're here together. This is why we're going to be continue to talk about karma, the laws of karma, this natural law that runs the universe. Okay, so we start with our little aspiration. Always these two parts. The first part is for those of us who kind of feel that we've it's reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second two lines are expressing this motivation, this marvelous, expansive motivation to listen so we can develop our marvelous potential, so we can become a Buddha eventually, so we can be of benefit to others. That's the idea. Sangye chadang soke chognam la jangchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shok sangye chadang soke chognam la jangchu baru dagni kyapsu chi dagi chonyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa shok. And again a third time, but I'll say it in English again to say a bit more. What we're saying is, until we are enlightened, we're going to rely upon the Buddha, his teachings, and our spiritual community. And then by the virtuous karmic seeds we plant in our mind from listening to these teachings, may we become a Buddha, so we can be of benefit to sentient beings. That's it. Okay. So far, what we're talking about the mind and this law of karma, because they go together. You can't separate them because the mind creates karma, you know. So we've discussed the basic principles of it. So let's just reiterate those points. And then today I think we'll go more detail into living in vows, the power of vows, why that's the best way to kind of really apply the laws of karma for our own benefit, and also how to purify negative karma. We haven't really discussed those yet, but let's do that. But first, let's just summarize the points we've covered. That this law of karma, you know, it's Buddha's own experiential findings. He didn't get this from revelation. It didn't appear from the sky. He's not speculating. He didn't make it up. He's not a creator. These are fundamental points to remember, because we're so used to thinking of spiritual philosophy as something mystical coming from on high. We never think of it as something you've got to listen to, think about, and then prove. But that's exactly the point for the Buddha. So this law, as far as he's concerned, this is the law that runs the universe. This is totally, fundamentally different from the Christian teachings, the Muslim teachings, and the materialist teachings. It's fundamentally different. In fact, it's shockingly different, and it takes us a while to get past the assumptions we've been brought up with, either the religious views of a creator or the materialist philosophical views of, you know, the physical world being all there is, and our mummy and daddy and grandma and grandpa are the source of who we are. And then that brings the philosophy that the external world is the main source of who we are, from our own birth, and then our experiences in our life, why we're angry, why we're happy, why we're sad. The philosophy we live by is that it's the outside world that is the main cause. So this is the fundamental point that Buddha's arguing with. He says the outside world, of course it plays a role. Your mother, of course she plays a role. The mother and father, of course they play a role. Of course your brain plays a role. Of course the teachers at school who hit you play a role. He doesn't argue with any of that, which is the expertise of the materialist world. He simply says there's an extra component that we're totally missing out on, which is the role of our mind. Not just now, how we respond to things, but what we come into this world and to this life programmed with. Our own mind, which is not physical, which is not the handiwork of a creator, which is not the handiwork of mummy and daddy, which is not the function of the brain, which is not physical, which is beginningless and endless, and which is driven by this law, this natural law that runs the universe. And that natural law is that every millisecond of whatever occurs in any mind, the mind of a dog, a monkey, or all the other beings that we can't see, they're all called mind possessors. Mind possessor, Sem Chen in Tibetan, literally mind possessor. An ant is a mind possessor. Buddha doesn't discuss a soul. You know, a dog is a mind possessor. There are all kinds of these beings we can't see who are mind possessors. You know, a monkey, a human, we're all mind possessors. So Buddha's deal is what he's observed is that every millisecond of whatever arises in any of these minds, and then on the basis of which actions are done with the voice, or the body, the voice especially for us clever humans, this process is the process of quote unquote creating karma. It's the process of cause and effect. Now, not cause and effect in terms of getting hundreds of millions of dollars, and not cause and effect in terms of building a building, but cause and effect in terms of getting happiness or suffering, which can include having a building or millions of dollars. So this is the natural law that runs the universe. He didn't make it up. It wasn't created by anybody. Nobody runs it. These are the thoughts that are taking us time to hear, because now we have these deep assumptions of somehow some first big bang cause is out there somewhere, you know. The Catholics, the Christians spend a lot of time philosophically discussing the possibility, how it is possible to have what they refer to as a first cause, which is what they are asserting if you posit a creator. The Buddha would say that's not feasible, and this is all the philosophical arguments against that. He's not just being argumentative, he's trying to find the truth. He's trying to find out what is real, what is true. That's his business. So we need, if it is true, this is the simple logic, that whatever I think and then do and say is the main cause of whether I'm a happy or suffering person, then I'd better learn this law, honey children. So simple. If the main cause of what's in your garden is the seeds you plant, then it's surely fairly logical that if you want flowers and don't want weeds, you'd better learn the laws of botany. Well, here we're talking Buddha's botany. It's pretty straightforward, you know. So of course in the beginning you can't prove it's true. You're not a gardener yet. But you've got to take it as your hypothesis. You check up on these reasonable teachers at school and think, you know, college, and discover that they're fairly reasonable. They've got a good reputation. They're not speaking nonsense. You have to have that confidence first. Same with the Buddha. You check up and then you decide you're going to take what he says as your working hypothesis, which you then proceed to understand and eventually prove to be true. This is being a Buddhist. But we're sort of intellectually lazy. In a sense, we'd rather believe something or not believe, whichever the case may be, you know. It's just laziness, intellectual laziness. Because Buddha's either right or wrong. We have to find out, you know. So here we're taking as our hypothesis this rule, this law that runs in the minds and lives of every living being. And Buddha would assert that there are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of semchens, living beings, mind possessors. Humans are a tiny percentage. So that the way we put this into practice for ourselves, which is the point here, not just as some interesting theory to dump on other people. The first approach in practice is you take this for yourself, is that, well, guess what? I do want happiness and I don't want suffering. That's definitely true. So I better learn these laws. But of course, if we start looking more deeply into this, which we ought to do, we ought to check Buddha's definition of what is suffering and what is happiness. And that's quite a very fascinating discussion. I mean, we touched upon this, I'm sure. We have touched upon it already. So there are different levels of suffering and therefore different levels of happiness. But let's look at the first level, which is the main concern when we start to practice at the very first level of practice, entry-level junior school. You know, as Lama Zopa says, the first level of practice is immediately you start abiding by the laws of karma. You start not harming others. You start stopping killing, stealing, lying. But there's 7 little things. You refrain from Buddha's suggestion, Buddha's recommendation. He's a doctor. He's not forcing it down your throat. He's suggesting if you want to be happy at the first level, even reasonable happiness of getting nice things and having a decent life, then you don't kill, you don't steal, you don't take the ungiven, as the Tibetans would call it. And you don't misuse your body to harm others based on sexual attachment. And then 4 of the speech, which is for us humans, you don't say words that aren't true. You don't use harsh language and abuse people. You don't just rabbit on about nothing, boring people to tears. And you don't say bad things behind backs. I mean, these are our favourite things, you know. Speech is our favourite thing. So the Buddha would say every one of these actions or karmas, so none goes astray. Every one of these, and this is 1,000 a second practically, they sow seeds in your mind. And each of those seeds, as we know very well with a seed, by definition a seed brings a fruit. So obviously you're going to be very damn cautious about what seeds you plant in your garden. Are you not? That's the sense of rigor and sense of clarity that if you do take the law of karma seriously, that you would apply every second of the day, which sounds kind of exhausting because we just float along, you know, trying to be vaguely a nice person, vaguely not a nice person. Sort of like we're vaguely chucking seeds in our ground every second, hoping they'll turn out to be nice ones. Then you can't live your life like that. It's too lazy. You've got to learn botany, please. It's such a good analogy, you know. Because every second of what you think and do and say is sowing seeds, and each will bring a fruit. So, of course, you only want the happy ones. So let's look at what happiness means at a simple level. Not complicated, not a more advanced level of happiness like enlightenment or being free of attachment. That's more subtle, that's more profound, that's more marvelous. But look at the simple level, the one we all understand. Basically, if you think of your life right now, and someone might badmouth you, do you like it? No. Well, then you should ask, oh, I wonder what the cause is. So you see a weed in your ground, do you like that? No. Well, what's the cause? Well, you don't blame the weather. You don't blame the inventors of botany. You don't blame your next door neighbour. You don't just sit there and go, oh, well, I'll let it grow. You don't have a panic attack. You think I better pull it out. Not before you even pull it out. You stop sowing more of them. That's why the very first level of practice, as Lama Zopa says, you know, don't worry about what's in your garden now. Stop sowing more weeds. This is really clear. Then you can start taking care of the seeds you have already planted that haven't yet ripened. That's purification, and we'll get to that. And then you add to this, living this in this basic, basic principles of good ethics, in the framework of living in vows of ethics. So Buddha loves his vows, and we'll go into this. So this is the basic approach. This has got nothing to do with compassion for others yet. And this is a crucial point that we really miss in our culture. The Buddhist teachings about karma, where they come in the process of the practices, it comes at the very beginning, where the Buddha says, well, you've got to at least start stopping further suffering for yourself, which is a way of saying how to get happiness. At least you stop growing more weeds. This is the very first, most urgent level of practice. So you don't get more weeds. And then you can put the atomic bombs under the weeds by purifying. We'll discuss all that. That's what we're going to discuss today. And by living in vows to add to that. So the basic thing is the thing that we miss. Why does Buddha in the very beginning practice exhort us not to kill? Well, the first thing we would think is, well, that's because people don't like getting killed. I mean, that's a pretty good reason. And in fact, the Buddha would label an action as a negative one. The heaviest negative actions are those that necessarily harm others. That's what he would define as a negative action. So this is a really powerful point, by the way. I was brought up a Catholic. Many of us have got a Catholic upbringing, and this is where it's fundamentally different, and we need to understand these points very clearly. I always quote this 1,000 times. I've quoted this. I have this Jesuit priest friend. Well, I haven't seen him for years, but we, had these wonderful discussions. And I asked him, what is a sin by definition? What causes something to be called a wrong action, a negative action? Christians would say a sin. And so we need to know that. What is it that makes it wrong? Well, this is what's powerful in the creator religions. He said, the main thing that causes that action of killing another human being, for example, to be called a sin, is because God said not to do it. Now, if you have the view of a creator, that fits, that's logic. And that's the main thing, he said, that makes it a sin. He said the other aspect, that it's a natural law that people don't like getting killed, that's natural law. That does play a role in determining the negativity of the action. But the key thing is the fact that God said not to do it. I mean, this is stupendously powerful as a philosophical view. Now, if you think about it, in the materialist world, that's the view we have as well. Your mother says, don't do that. And you're being a smarty pants and you say, why not? And we know her answer, because I say so. Look when people are not being good lawmakers. Look when they're being heavy-duty police. You do this. Why? Because I say so. That's fundamentalism. That's kind of like fascism, But that's the view we have of morality. No wonder we're so neurotic. And that's why when we grow up and we start to go, I'm not going to do what you have to, I'm going to decide, I'm going to do what I like. You're not going to tell me what to do. And if you look at any fundamentalist philosophical system, whether it's religious or something like, fundamentalist secular views like communism, when it's really fundamentalist, or like you're seeing with these, Taliban perhaps, one person already they're beating people up and smashing people in the face with guns. What do you think that's coming from? I say so, you'd better do it. That's the heavy duty view.
Recording in progress.
That's the heavy duty view we have of morality. That's why we're so neurotic. That's what we think it means. So then when we hear that God says do this and do that, now if you have faith in God, that's a brilliant view. It's an amazing view. But it happens to be not the Buddha's view. That's what I'm getting at. Because why? Because Buddha does not assert a creator. He is not himself a creator. Therefore, there's no such thing as punishment and reward, because there's no such thing as a punisher or a rewarder. It's a dualistic view. It's a mistaken philosophy, Buddha says. These are the stuff we've got to think about. So then we've got to ask the Buddha, well then Buddha, why does Buddha, like Jesus, suggest I don't kill? What's his reason? Well, he would say, by definition for the Buddha, there is only natural law in things like this. Killing is wrong, not because he said so. That's like thinking you go to your doctor and she says, don't smoke cigarettes, Rabina, and you say, why not? She won't say, because I say so, and I'm going to punish you with cancer if you're naughty. You would laugh at that. She is telling you it's not to smoke, because, Rabina, it will bring natural results called cancer, and sweetie, I don't want you to suffer. That's Buddha. He has found from his own experience that doing actions that harm others, because, and this is the point, because they're driven by anger, they're driven by a neurotic state of mind, that's the process that causes you to suffer. So the main reason behind Buddha's exhorting us not to kill, steal, lie, to live in vows and purify at the first level of practice, the main thing the reason he exhorts us is like a good doctor. Because, Rabina, sweetheart, you know you don't want to suffer, and these actions are the cause of your future suffering. When it comes to sugar and wrong food and cigarettes, we get it. When it comes to morality, we do not. We hear it as punishment and reward. That's our big mistake. So, it takes a while to take this philosophical view on board. It takes a while to hear this appropriately. In other words, it takes it a while for us not to hear it as punishment and therefore to turn it against ourselves. I'm a bad person. Look how evil I am. I kill, I steal, I lie, I'm angry. That's the typical way we brutalize ourselves, because we have already internalized the view of punishment and reward, and that's what anger is. That's what guilt is. That's what self-hate is. We are like someone else beating us up. We're like the policeman out there with his big stick beating us. We become our own police and we beat ourselves up. This is horrible. This is not the approach. Your doctor doesn't abuse you when she says don't smoke. She does it with compassion. That's what we have to cultivate for ourselves. And that's why we got to think, why should I not kill, steal, lie? Because, Rabina, sweetheart, everything I think and do and say produces the person I become. And I know I don't want future suffering. That has to bring a softness, a kindness to ourselves, not this brutal I am bad, which is what we love to think. So this takes time. This whole approach takes time. We've got to think it through logically. So for the Buddha, he exhorts us not to kill, not because he says so, just like your doctor. It's because he has found from his own experience that my killing and stealing and lying, because they're based on delusions, are what program my mind with those tendencies which will ripen in the future, as we've discussed in our last classes, into those 4 different results. A type of suffering rebirth, number 1. Number 2, even if we get a human body, which is the fruit of non-killing, look at the human realm, we wake up in this life because we haven't purified it properly with a tendency to keep killing. The next result is you get killed. The next result is you have the environmental result. So if we just think in simple terms, do I like all the time being sick and in pain and having food harm me and the weather harm me and the water and the air, harm? The answer is no. Well, what's the solution? You find out what caused it. Past killing caused that. Then stop killing. Do you like people trying, lying to you, not believing your words? No, you can't stand it. Solution, find the cause. The cause is your past lying. Solution, stop lying. The logic is quite straightforward. It's just that we've got to struggle our way through to hear it properly through all our ridiculous fundamentalist wrong views, Do you like people stealing from you? No. Do you like being poor and never finding enough money to exist? No. Well, then don't steal. It's not even, it's sort of almost, it's too uncomplicated almost. It almost seems too simplistic to us because we make it so complicated. Why is all this suffering happening to me? We don't know why. We can't work it out. And indeed, we can't work out also why the good things happen. We're discussing the weeds at the moment. Because the first step to get the flowers growing is to remove the weeds, isn't it? And stop planting more weeds. That's the first level of practice. So the basic principles, like I'm saying, everything I think and do and say sows seeds that produce my future. I produce myself. I'm the creator of myself. Dalai Lama calls karma like that. It's self-creation. It's a very powerful, marvelous view. I think it's marvelous. I'd rather be in charge than someone else. I think it's wonderful. I'm in charge. Wow. So let's look then at these extra powerful tools we can use to enhance this practice of abiding by the laws of karma. So one is to live in vows. So Buddha loves his vows. But as soon as we hear the word vow, we have a panic attack again. So we sort of think of it as somebody squashing it on top of us. But again, it's not like that. You're in charge, not Buddha. So a vow is a very strong decision to refrain from something. So here we're discussing very specifically kind of this Buddhist package of vows within the Buddhist system, So when you've thought about Buddhism, you've already decided to sort of use Buddha's little list of 10 don'ts as your guideline of how to behave, and you listen to the teachings and you think about the meaning and you study it, and at some point you make a decision to formalize your becoming a Buddhist. You're formalizing it. And that's done in this very short little ceremony in front of somebody who represents the Buddha for you, and you're kind of plugging into this power source, I mean, for example, I've been given permission by Lama Zopa Rinpoche to give refuge and the lay vows, the 5 lay vows which we're discussing. So I got those from my teacher. He got those from his teacher. They got theirs from their teacher. And you track that back in an unbroken chain of human beings all the way back to the Buddha 2,500 years ago. I find that pretty tasty. That's kind of lineage, and it's very powerful. It's just the same as anything we learn. My mother was a classical musician, right? She taught me music and singing. Well, where did she get her knowledge from? From her teacher. Where did they get their knowledge from? From their teacher. And if it's a living, and this is the point, if that's a living lineage of music knowledge, you can track it back in an unbroken chain of musicians, of real people, right back to Bach or Mozart or whoever you want to go to. That's a living lineage of knowledge. It's very beneficial. That's why you've got to have a human being in front of you. As Lama Yeshe says, the Buddha is dead. So the Four Noble Truths only becomes real for you when you get it in the presence in front of you from a human being whom you have decided is the Buddha for you. That's the business of what a guru is, a teacher, a spiritual mentor. They're the Buddha for you, and you choose that person. So then their words become powerful for you because they're speaking Buddha's words. My mother, she taught me music, not Bach, but she was effectively like Bach for me, because she carried that lineage of knowledge inside her. There's a lovely Tibetan term, knowledge holder. My mother was a knowledge holder. My guru is a knowledge holder. It's a very logical meaning. It's very delicious, So in a refuge in the lay vows, you receive it from a person in front of you, and then you commit first of all to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. And there's a series of little commitments that you decide you will do every day. A commitment is a decision to do something. And then the second part of it is you take the 5 lay person's vows, and then you are vowing to refrain. So even though the Buddha's little list at the very beginning, when you first listen to Buddha's teachings, he exhorts us, his first piece of advice is basically to refrain from 10 actions. He suggests this as medicine, the doctor. So the first 7 are the body and the speech, as I've said already. The first 3 of the body, he's suggesting you don't kill or steal or misuse your body based on sexual attachment. Don't rape or that kind of thing, or cheat on your partner. 3 of the body. Then 4 of the speech, which obviously is for us humans. You don't say words that aren't true. Like I said before, those 7. So that's 7. Then the last 3 of these 10, which Buddha recommends as a starting point for your practice and as a general basis in the future for your practice. But these aren't commitments you say to anybody, and they're not vows. They're advice from your doctor. So the last 3 of these 10, sort of this little checklist of 10 don'ts. This is before you've taken refuge. You start to abide by these. You've chosen to. The last 3 are about the mind. So my way of putting it is, you don't really start getting into your mind. You don't really start becoming your own therapist until you get to the next level of practice, which they talk about in the Lam Rim, this packaging of the teachings that we're referring to here. That's in this middle scope of teachings, and I call that like high school. Here's junior school. So the mind, though, Buddha's exhorting us to at least refrain from at least the heaviest levels of the 3 poisons, as he calls them. So when we go into the mind in more depth, and we've sort of done that over the weeks we're discussing it here in this context, the way delusions work and the way our virtues work, we have to distinguish between them. This is the key job of being a Buddhist. We're going to see, Buddha talks about, he's got this map of the mind, basically. He talks about 84,000 neurotic states of mind. So, and there's like this map, you know. I mean, I always keep asking the Geshis what text you're going to find that in, but they never know where. So it must be back there somewhere in the text somewhere. But basically, there are these thousands of neurotic, deluded states of mind that in their nature are deeply disturbing and also are delusional, which means the extent to which your mind is caught up in attachment or anger, for example, is the extent to which you are caught up in, you are disturbed, and also the extent to which you are caught up in believing in the lies that this attachment and aversion tell you. So when you see the chocolate cake through the lenses of attachment, the attachment causes it to look way more delicious than it really is. We have that attachment for our own self, for our body, for example. But because as soon as we look in the mirror, our expectation of a beautiful body, a picture we have in our mind of a beautiful body, suddenly attachment is completely thwarted and aversion and disgust arise, and we go, oh, how disgusting. Look at how disgusting I am. So that view of me as ugly is the view of anger, which is the view of thwarted attachment. So the assumption in the mind first is the attachment, this idea that I should be more beautiful, this idea that I ought to be beautiful, and you look in the mirror and you see ugly. So that's why we're always miserable. That's the same with the chocolate cake, with the boyfriend, with everything. There's this process, never stopping. This is the way the mind works. So anyway, where was I? Back, that wasn't the point here. Oh yeah, so at the first level of these 10 non-virtues that Buddha exhorts us to try and refrain from, the last 3, he gets us to at least refrain from the heaviest levels of anger, which are what? They call it ill will. And this is in relation to other people. You know, when you really cannot give up the rage. We have it for ourselves. We do have it. We never stop hating ourselves sometimes. Some people, we have it, we all got it. It's a question of degree. But sometimes this aversion is so strong, it might be focused on our body, it might be focused on the qualities that we think we haven't got. I'm so angry, I'm so unintelligent, I'm so jealous, I'm this, I'm depressed, or my body is ugly. Depends on your mind, whether it's your body or your qualities, or both. You know, sometimes you hate all of yourself. This is, Dalai Lama heard this about the modern world, and he said, that's so much suffering. That's a mental illness. And it's true. Buddha's calling all of this mental illness. We think it's normal. But so the very first level of practice, he gets us to at least refrain from the heaviest levels of anger in relation to others, which means you can't stop being angry and you even want the person to suffer. But that's what we do to ourselves, and we harm ourselves. Look at us. When we do that to ourselves, it's shocking. It is just shocking. We should be broken-hearted at our suffering, at our suffering. The next one Buddha gets us to, at least he exhorts us to refrain from the heaviest levels of attachment, which is really the grosser levels. The grosser levels of attachment, when you want to eat 57 cakes a day, you want to jump on 42 boys every day. You're deeply a junkie for the bodies, for the food, for the heroin, for whatever it might be. At least try and harness that energy. And that attachment can manifest, again, most of us have attachment to food. We can see that. And it either manifests that you constantly eat, or you have such attachment to your body, but you've also got attachment to food, so there's this constant fight inside yourself. So then the attachment to the food is so strong, but your attachment to the body is even stronger, so you end up either starving yourself, the world calls it anorexia, or you eat and stuff yourself and then vomit. That's called bulimia, these labels they give it. It's all to do with attachment. Attachment to the body, in that case, is stronger than attachment to the food. But you're struggling all the time to fighting between these two. All these are variations of attachment. And then they manifest as self-loathing when attachment is thwarted. I mean, it's really quite clear, but it's hard to unpack it initially. And of course, because in the West, we keep trying to find out what happened to us when we were little children. And that just, for the Buddha, is not the issue. That's not his concern. He says we can learn everything about ourselves by looking at our mind. And knowing that these tendencies don't come from mummy and daddy. They come from my past habits. My mind is mine. And the third one Buddha exhorts us to refrain from is the grossest levels of the root delusion, which is called ignorance, this self-grasping that clings to this concrete sense of me, which is totally fear-based. So at least refrain from the grossest levels of ignorance, which manifest in the world as like fundamentalism. This narrow-minded fundamentalist view. It mightn't necessarily be religion or politics. It might just be, I'm right and you're wrong, and it's fixed in stone. That fundamentalist view is the gross, really painful level of ignorance, So at least we harness the grossest levels of anger, the grossest levels of attachment, and the grossest levels of this ignorance. This is 10, this is a starting point. So then when we start to listen to the teachings, we think about it, we decide we'd like to commit. So we take refuge in front of somebody who represents the Buddha for us. And then we take the 5 lay vows. So we take from those 7 of body and speech, we take 5 of them. We take 4, then we add 1. So what are these 5? So like I said, Buddha loves his vows. In fact, in Buddhism, there are 3 sets of vows, 3 levels. The second more advanced than the first, and the third the most advanced at all. And as far as the Buddha is concerned, vows are the powerful psychological techniques, Of course, Buddha didn't use the word psychology. It was Greek, for God's sake. He didn't speak Greek. The Greeks came along after the Buddha, I think. I mean, every fancy word we have in our English, every fancy word in English, as soon as it's fancy, as soon as it's to do with mind or botany or science, we use a foreign word. Look at the word science. I mean, it's whatever. That's Greek, isn't it? That's not Latin. Greek. We mostly love our Greek words. Bulimia, anorexia. They're all Greek. For God Almighty's sake, it's so bizarre how we give them fancy names. It's ridiculous. Psychology, psychosis, schizophrenia, bipolar. I don't know what that is. Very, very funny in our culture. Anyway, never mind. So, okay, what are these vows? So why are they powerful? This is the thing that's really important to understand. And this, for me, this is why I'm a nun. What am I wearing these 14th century maroon robes with a bald head for? I tell you. I love living in vows. It just sounds so delicious and tasty. So what it is like this. In order to understand the power of vows, we have to understand how we create karma. So we've talked about this, but now I'm going to discuss it again. So remember, every millisecond of what I think and then do and then say is the process of creating karma. It's just how it is. No one runs it. No one's judging it. So we have to become familiar with it so I can be in charge of it. So, okay. So what we need, even just at the time of our death, what we need more than anything is bucket loads of delicious, virtuous karmic seeds in our bank vaults. Notice, obviously it's an analogy. Buddha does not talk about bank vaults. Because if every millisecond of what you think and do and say leaves seeds in your bank vaults, put it that way, then at the time of death, This life is now finished, and what we need more than anything, and Lama Zopa talks about this in his marvelous book, How to Face Death Without Fear. It's been published by Wisdom a couple of years ago, and it's just, and I edited it, so I'm very familiar with it. But it's this whole approach of how to help your loved ones, you know, die well and peacefully, so they can die and get reborn at least as another decent human being, and to keep on moving on their spiritual practice. Because this life's finished, and we've sort of got to navigate between this life and the next one, and that's a difficult time because of our attachment. So what we need is bucket loads of delicious, non-killing, specifically generally non-harming, but specifically non-killing karmic seeds. Because why? Because the cause of getting a human body, the cause of your consciousness after it leaves this body and then goes through this intermediate state and then eventually finds its way to another womb, the cause of going to a human mummy is not good luck, is not a creator, is not random. It's the result of non-killing. A decent human body is the fruit of non-killing. Of course, it seems abstract to us to understand that, but it's all in the teachings there for us to learn. So we need bucket loads of delicious, non-killing karmic seeds, such that when we die, one of those can be triggered, and then even before we stop breathing, that karmic seed has been triggered, and we are now programmed to go to the next mother's human womb in a few weeks' time, when she hops into bed with daddy, you know. So this is a very precise technical thing. So we need lots of good, virtuous karmic seeds in our bank vaults. Not only just that, we also want, when we wake up in the next life, we want to have a nice, good mind. We want to have tendencies to not kill, not steal, not lie. We don't want to be psychotic, schizophrenic, bipolar, all those terms. Purposely I'm using them. We want to have nice mummies and nice daddies and good environment and money in the bank and a good education and good food and good environment and good friends. You want all that if you want to continue, if you take this view. So what are the causes for that? Living in vows. No, before vows, not killing, not stealing, not lying, not harming, not bad-mouthing, not jumping on the wrong partner. These practical things, those actions that Buddha recommends we refrain from. So the mere refraining from something, that sounds a bit passive to us. But every time you so okay, this is the point now about the power of vows. The power of vows is such, as Lama Zopa says, that 24 hours a day that you're keeping that vow, even without any intention, while you're asleep, while you're walking down the street, while you're in the pub having a beer with your new boyfriend, 24 hours a day, if you are keeping those vows, these vows, the Buddha would say, in the teachings it says this, that they are this subtle physical energy that's visible to clairvoyance. And that sounds pretty esoteric, but it indicates something very powerful about a vow. So a vow is when you kneel in front of that person and you repeat after them 3 times, I will never kill, I will never lie, I will never steal. So it's not just wishful thinking, but you're planting that tendency so powerfully into your mind. So a person with a vow, Lama Zopa said you've got 2 people who practice, let's say. One person has lots of Dharma practice, but doesn't have a vow merely not to kill. Another person merely has a vow not to kill. The person who's merely got the vow, who mightn't do much other practice, they are creating more virtuous karmic seeds and putting atomic bombs under the negative tendencies. But than the first person, 1,000 times more powerful because of the power of vows. So in other words, the person without a vow, so given that we need bucket loads of non-killing, non-harming seeds in our bank vault at the time of death, just that alone, how do you get those seeds in there? Well, if you don't have a vow not to kill, here we all are sitting here in our own little room right now, and probably most of us are not killing anything at this moment. Well, aren't the rats and cockroaches happy? We're leaving them in peace. That's fine for the cockroaches and the rats. But what about the karma we are creating? Well, if we don't have a vow not to kill, at this moment that I'm not killing a rat, I am not creating any karma whatsoever, because karma has to involve the mind. The word intention, not meaning good intention, but the bare bones volition, I will, intention. That's the very meaning of karma, and that's the mind. So your hand is involved in taking the $20, but the mind is the cause of taking the $20. Your hand won't go out there and take $20 if your mind hasn't thought it. So if there's no thought to take $20, then there's no karma of taking $20. So if there's never any thought of not killing, unless you meet the ant and you decide, oops, I must not kill, it's only then that you drop a little karmic seed into your bank vault of not killing. And because our motivations are not very strong, it's a very weak little non-killing karmic seed. So we can't get ahead of the game unless we live in vows. This is the Buddhist view. So because we want to get ahead of the game, we want to practice ethics, we want to practice morality, we want to gather as many karmic seeds. And this is such a good analogy. And of course, we don't think like this in our world. Of course not. This is the most powerful, tasty, delicious way to accumulate lots of virtuous karmic seeds and to program your mind in non-killing and to put atomic bombs under the tendency of killing. That's what vows do. I mean, Lama Zopa just constantly teaches on this, and therefore I do too, because I find it so delicious. Of course, we have to take this view of karma as a hypothesis. It's the easy way to really have a good practice. So there's the vows, the first level of vows, which are at the first level of practice, are the vows of refraining from harming. So there are 5. You decide you will not kill. Now, you will not steal. You will not lie. You will not, jump on the wrong partner or rape. And you will not, the 5th one is you won't take intoxicants. So you don't have to take all these 5 when you first take refuge. So let's look at what these vows are and how you break them. Because we panic a bit. Oh my God, what if I kill? What if I steal? What if I lie? So the thing is, a vow is a conscious, intentional decision to refrain from killing. So breaking a vow has to be very conscious as well. You have to know it's a vow. You have to not care. You have to do the action, and you have no interest in fixing it. That's not common. We don't do that, We might kill by accident. We might say something we didn't mean to say that was not true. We might take something accidentally. So to break a vow is very intentional. So not to be afraid of it, and try and remember the power of having the vow in your mind stream is counteracting those tendencies and purifying those tendencies all the time. So because we are a bit lazy and we might weaken the vows, not consciously even break them, this is why at the end of the day, we must do the purification practice. As Lama Zopa says, we're insane not to do it every day. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So the vows then, you break a vow in a major way if you intentionally kill a human being, which means there's a human being there, it's a human being, you've got a vow not to kill, you don't care, you decide to do it anyway, you do it willfully, and you have no interest in fixing it. That's most people won't break their vow like that. I mean, sometimes when it comes to alcohol, maybe you took the vow too quickly, you didn't think about it, and then you forgot about it, and you just start to drink again. That's breaking your vow. Of course it is. So then we get nervous. Well, my God, what if I break a vow? We live in panic every second. What if I break a vow? What if I break a vow? But that's a bit like, you've got to see the advantages of living in a vow. You've got to see the advantages. Of course, there are disadvantages of breaking it. Of course there are. But you've got to see how the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. And you've got to have courage. So it's a little bit like, you decide, I'm going to drive a car. And then you start to think, well, what if I crash? Or what if I drive the wrong way? Or what if a car runs in front of me? Or what if I get a speeding ticket? Or what if I go too fast? Or what if I forget what to do? You'll have a panic attack. You'll never even walk out the door. So you've got to decide that's all a possibility. You could die on the road. You might get a speeding ticket. You might go too fast. You might go through the red light. It's a possibility. But the more clearly you understand the benefits of driving, the more confident you will be in learning the rules of driving, which are basically like vows. I mean, we worry about vows. It's a joke. When you just drive a car, if you had to write down the number of things you have vowed not to do, there'd be hundreds. but because you know the advantages of driving, and you know that if you do it with confidence, and you know what you're not supposed to do, you know you shouldn't go over 70 miles an hour, you know you don't turn left when you want to turn right, you know you don't put your foot on the accelerator at the same time as a brake. There are hundreds of things that you've internalized and you've learned, and with confidence you keep them to the best of your ability, and then you get the advantages of driving a car. It's the same with living in vows. Not to live in fear, you know. Fear is useless. Have intelligent fear, yeah. It's kind of a wisdom. You learn to live this way because you realize you are the boss. So obviously you learn the vows properly. And you every day, and when you purify every day, you reiterate. When you do the fourth step, you resolve not to kill again, not to steal again. You strengthen that vow every time you do that. It's like every time you do push-ups, you get stronger and stronger and better at it. That's what it is with vows. You live in your vows. You watch your body, speech, and mind like a hawk. You delight in your virtue. You fix things when you make a mistake, and you purify at the end of the day. This is the best practice. And this will bring the first level of happiness and stop the first level of suffering. Forget about the more subtle levels. This is fundamental. This is the starting point. So you vow not to kill human beings or other beings. Now that's quite hard for us in the West because we just think it's normal to kill the cockroaches and the rats. You know, so you've got to really think about that. If you break in a major way, you kill a human. That means you break all your vows at the root, and you have to take the vow again. If you break in a minor way, like you kill the ant, you purify to the end of the day. Then the second one is you vow not to steal, not to take the ungiven, as Lama Zopa translates it. Tibetan put it that way. That you break in a major way if you steal something of value to someone else. Intentionally, knowing you've got a vow, not caring, doing it, and having no interest in fixing it. You break in a minor way if you take anything that hasn't been given. So these are really good guidelines, just like all the rules of the road are good guidelines for you that enable you to drive the car properly. Well, these are vows that are good guidelines for you of how to turn yourself into a happy, good human being. No one's out there punishing you and rewarding you, which is the view we have. This judgment and guilt we have is just neurotic, you know. It's just made up by our minds. It's rubbish. The third one is stealing. No, I said that one. Taking the ungiven. Lying. No, stealing, taking the ungiven. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Killing, you kill in a major way if you kill a human, a minor way if you kill other creatures. Intentionally. Stealing if you take something of value to someone else. That's a stealing in a major way, and you break at the root if you do it, and then you break in a minor way if you take anything that hasn't been given. Lying, you break in a major way if you lie about your spiritual attainments. So you've got to be careful about this. Don't panic. You know, we probably most don't have any spiritual attainment, so nothing to say, you know. But if you know, so you just be quiet. That's why it's really good not to talk about your spiritual practice. Just shut your mouth. It's your private business. Talk about it to your teacher or to your spiritual friends whom you trust, you know. And you break in a minor way if you say anything that isn't true. But you've got to be conscious. See, this is a problem for us because speech just vomits out our mouths. We just pour out any rubbish we like. We don't value speech in our culture. We don't think it makes any difference. We think I can say what I like because we have no feeling, no sense that everything we say programs our mind. So I think we don't mean to say things that aren't true, but we don't even realize we're not speaking the truth. We speculate so often. You know, our world is full of just vomit, endless information pouring out of the internet every second, and everybody will just believe anything they hear. Words are so powerful, actually. So often we don't even realize that what we say isn't true. So that's not a lie because you didn't intend to, but you're weakening your mind, you know. So we've got to really watch what we say. If you don't know the answer, shut up. But we all want to be seen as a good girl and blurt out an answer. Or I read this and it says that, you know. Or even as something as simple as, what time does that shop close, Rabina? Or 4 o'clock. Are you sure? Yes. And you go down and they were closed at 3 o'clock. And then I'll go, oh, well, I thought it was 4 o'clock. So we don't even know. So we should shut our mouths unless we are certain. This is a very profound practice, actually. I can't stress this one. We can talk a lot about this. Speech is incredibly powerful. And the fact is, we all need what they call the power of speech. That's finally what the Buddha has. The speech of a Buddha is what causes you to get enlightened. You can look at Buddha, 47 Buddhas looking very beautiful at you every day. If they don't open their mouths and give you their advice, where can you go? What can you do? And so in our own daily lives, speech is so powerful. We want people to believe our words. We want people to take our words seriously. We know how painful it is when you talk and no one listens. It's so painful. That's from past gossiping in past lives, rabbiting on about nothing. You devalue your speech. People don't believe your words even when you're speaking the truth. That's from past lying. So to watch our speech is so important, I tell you. Then the fourth vow is basically it's called sexual misconduct, and there's lots of ways of interpreting that. But the general way, I mean, His Holiness always says, don't rape. They don't say that in the texts. They say, but the other one is don't cheat on your partner. So if you've got a relationship and you've got an agreement, with one person, you don't cheat on them, and you don't cheat on somebody else, take someone else's partner. And the fifth one is intoxicants. So, some people like to have I joke, like if you like to have your shot of heroin every day, then don't take this vow. I'm just joking, So, people like to have their glass of wine or whatever, so you don't take the vow. You don't have to take all 5. So the thing is to see the advantages. You've got to see the advantages of living by the road rules. You've got to see the advantages of knowing how to drive a car. Don't put the foot on the accelerator at the same time as the brake. Don't turn the wheel left if you turn right. Don't do this. Don't do that. You learn hundreds of these don'ts, and you're happy to learn them because you see the advantages of living in vows, of living in the vows of how to drive a car. Same here. And the benefit, like I've been saying, is stupendous. You should be so blissful to live in vows because it's helping you practice ethics every second of the day, ticking over lots of good, virtuous, delicious, virtuous karmic seeds, so that it programs your mind in this life, and then you're totally ready for the next life. You've built the perfect garden for the future life. The best way to get the next future life perfect is by living in vows. So we've got to understand this. Then we'll have enthusiasm, So now we're going to talk about how to purify, but after. So now I've talked for an entire hour. So now I need you to ask me some questions, please, about anything you like, but particularly in relation to vows, if you'd like. This is the first level of vows. There's 2 others after. We won't discuss those today, maybe. So ask questions, please, if you'd like. Anything at all. If you have questions. If not, then it's okay. But I'd love it if you did have questions. Where's my drink? Oh, I don't know where it is. There it is. Okay. Come on, people. Anything? Most of your faces are hidden today. I don't know why. You're all lying back on your bed looking naked or something. Why are you hiding from me? How curious. Go, babies. Talk to me. Some questions. Anything. Start the ball rolling. Love you. Have you got a question? No?
Yes.
Good, darling.
Well, I have a problem with vows.
A problem?
Yes, I have a problem because there were times when I tried to actually stop doing certain things, like stop drinking, something like that, for a longer period or something like that. I don't have a problem with alcohol, but I do like to drink a beer from time to time. It's more difficult to abstain.
I know, but you don't need to take it, Flavio, so then relax. You don't need to take the vow. That's okay.
I realize that actually whatever I put into my mind, I self-sabotage.
I know, but I know what you're saying. We are very commonly like that, Flavio. But my feeling is, do you drive a car?
Unfortunately, not yet, or fortunately.
Okay, but you've learned lots of things that demanded you learn the rules, right? You know how to use a computer. You know how to write a sentence. Well, if you look at that, you've learned lots of things that you mustn't do, and you're very happily to do those. You don't self-sabotage and purposely smash your computer every time you use it. It's just that when it comes to spiritual stuff, we sort of have panic attacks. We're like ridiculous. I understand that. So in the end, no one's forcing you to take the vows. But do you kill anyway? Do you lie? Do you steal? Do you rape people every day? Are they your
No,
tendency?
I don't. Actually, I abstain myself from killing flies lately.
Okay, then. So then you don't have a worry about deciding to make a vow not to kill, a vow not to steal, a vow not to lie. If you can, the point is though, you've got to see the advantages of the vow, which I've tried to express in this teaching. If you can see that's an advantage, then you'll be so happy to live in the vow. If you don't see the advantage, nothing will cause you to want to do it. Do you see my point?
Yes, I'll be a little bit more precise. At some point, I not necessarily took a vow, but I said to myself not to speak, or I was in the context of not speaking about what I was doing and not speaking even with my family, my mother, and so forth. And I actually kept that, not necessarily vow, but I kept my silence for over 3 years.
What do you mean by silence? Sorry, Flavio, what do you mean by silence?
By silence, meaning that nobody knew what I was doing, and
so what was the reason you did that? Because
at some point I was given instruction towards that goal, and I kept it. I took it very seriously, and it worked.
I understand that. I'm asking Flavio. I'm asking you why you decided to do that. What was the reason behind it? What was the advantage of doing that? What was the benefit to you of doing that?
I was just following instruction.
Well, that's a stupid thing to do, just follow an instruction. You're not an idiot. You're the boss of your life. Forgive me, I'm not being rude to you.
Perhaps it was.
Well, then maybe that's the problem. You didn't think about the logical reason. It's like someone says stand on one leg, and for 3 years you stand on one leg, and then I say to you, why? Oh, well, someone said so. I'm sorry, Flavio, I don't care if it was God or the Pope who told you to do it. It's idiocy to do something because someone said. Forgive me. So I think maybe that's your mistake. Unless you have total faith in that person and you believe that they have your best interests in their mind. But you should at least, the logic is you got to know the benefits. Everything you do in your life, you've got to know the benefits of why you're going to do it. Then you'll have enthusiasm to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to destroy yourself. Are we communicating? Are we communicating? Are we communicating? Yes. Well, good. Think about it. What else do you want to say?
I just wanted to say that I did the opposite. At some point I started to speak, and I understood why it was important to keep silent, but I kept speaking, so I started to speak more and more.
Okay, so what are we Flavio, I understand. So what are you learning from this conversation?
That is very difficult to keep a vow.
No, no, that's not what you should be learning. You should learn to know what the hell you want to take a vow for in the first place. You haven't given me one logical reason yet. That's your problem. You just decide to do something as a vow and you make it concrete, and then you have problems. Of course you'll have problems. You've got to see the logic of why you would want to do something. Then you will have enthusiasm because you will see the benefit. That's what I'd like you to think about, Flavio. You're being too fundamentalist, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, precious one. Yes, somebody else wants to be shouted at. I'm happy to do it. Nobody else? Cosmin, what do you want to say?
Yeah, so I didn't take any vow towards anyone else. I acknowledge that power, but I made a promise to myself, like a few times.
Yes, I understand. Good.
And I wanna make an analogy. Let's say let's say an accident happened while driving, because there was a car analogy.
Yes.
And then I'm inclined to take the vow never to drive again, right? But then again, let's say I do that for 2 or 3 years, and I see all my friends driving without any incidents, but I notice they drive slowly.
Okay, so darling, get to the point, Cosmin. What's your question, sweetheart?
Yeah,
What's your question?
Can I diminish my vow at some point?
I don't understand the question,
make it more elaborate. I mean, for example, if I say I will never kill, right, any human being, any being, right? But then again, I get to a deeper understanding of that. Is it okay to break it in some point?
Okay, listen, darling, I hear your point. So, Cosmin, listen to me, listen. There are different levels of vows. So the first level of vows are related to the first level of practice, which is the very basic: don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't harm, don't this, don't that. Why? Because you know, like, don't eat sugar, don't smoke cigarettes. Why? And this is that Flaviu's missing. You see, you've got to see the reason why you don't want to kill, why you don't want to steal. It's because you don't want future suffering. That's the energy behind it that gives you the enthusiasm. Now, as you get more advanced and you go to the Bodhisattva path, Cosmin, then you will take the Bodhisattva vows, which are much more profound, and even in those vows where the main emphasis now is on how to help others. The first level is on how to help yourself. That's the basic. Then you get more advanced and more spacious, and you get more control, more disciplined, and you keep your vows perfectly. Then now you have a wish to want to benefit others, and that will even include breaking an earlier vow because it's truly for the sake of another. That's much more advanced. And yes, there is that there, but that's as we progress spiritually. Yes.
Thank you.
Do you understand?
Yes, thank you. Yeah,
it's a bit like you're in the beginning you don't know botany, and you can't tell the difference between a herb and a weed, and you hear that weed would kill you if you ate it. So you have to first avoid the weeds. But as you get more advanced as a botanist, you get more skillful, and you can see that you could even learn to use the weed. But that's only coming with more wisdom. It's exactly like that. So the answer is yes.
Exactly.
Do you understand my point?
Thank you.
But the fundamental point about these first level of vows, we've got to see the reason why you would not want to kill. The reason is because you don't want the future suffering that the habit of killing will produce for you, in just the same way that you will vow. I mean, I've seen people, Flavio, who understand that if they eat sugar, they'll get diabetes. I promise you, that person is so rigorous. They look at every label and they will never eat anything until they are certain there's no sugar there. Not because their doctor told them and they're living in fear. It's because they do not want diabetes. So when you know the reason you're taking a vow, when you know the advantage of standing on one leg or being silent, then you will want to keep it because you are happy with the result. It's not just doing it because someone said. That's just absurd. So that's the point I'm saying, Cosmin. When you know the logic behind why you would not want to kill and steal and lie is because you don't want future suffering. That's the part that's hard for us in our culture.
Can I make another analogy?
No, just ask me a question, darling. Just ask me a question. It's a lot easier, please.
Okay, no, I don't have a question. I just have another analogy.
No, don't worry. Unless you have a question, just leave it there. What else, people?
May I add something that
make it a question, Flavio. Ask me a question, sweetheart.
Yes. What if I logically know that something is bad, but
no, I don't know. Flavio, already you're spacing out. What are you talking about? You already know something is bad. What do you mean by bad?
By bad is something that's harm to me. For example, alcohol. I drink alcohol, and this is damaging my health, but I kept drinking it.
So then what's the question, darling? So what's the question?
Okay, in this case, I see the logic, but I keep doing this.
So what's the question? What's the question?
How do I solve this kind of problem?
What do you think? What's your answer to that? You're a grown-up man with a very intelligent mind. What is the approach you would take?
It is absurd because I see
no, what
like
is the I don't want commentary. Give me the answer. What is the approach? How do you learn to change? In anything in your life, what's the process you have to go through to change?
I observe my mind,
and you keep making a decision, and you try to change every day, and eventually you'll be successful. So you just have to keep trying. That's it. Very simple. Okay. Not complicated, Flavio. Who else? Anna. Yes, Anna, darling.
Hello, Venerable. Apart from doing the Vajrasattva practice...
Start again, darling. What? Start again, what?
Apart from doing the Vajrasattva practice, are there any other ways whereby I could speed up the burning of my karma, or, you know, my karma not coming to fruition?
I mean, if there were, it'd be in the teaching somewhere. I mean, you've got to understand how you create karma. Then you have to understand the power of living in vows. Then you understand the power of every day purifying, or 20 times a day, or 30 times a day. Maybe the simple answer is you do it 20 times a day instead of once. I mean, if every time you apply the antidote to something you did wrong, the more times you do it, the more you purify. So obviously, if you know, even if don't, in other words, you each thinking is sort of thinking like, is there a more powerful way to stop the harm that sugar produces in my body? Because every time you eat sugar, you might eat something with a bit of sugar, you don't wait till the end of the day to then apply the antidote. If you do it every time, you get into the habit of immediately catching your mind. And that's the most advanced practice. That really demands an enormous amount of awareness. That's quite advanced, darling. We're not that aware. So the second if you see your mind and you counteract it, that's how you do it. And the more you do that, the better you do it. And the more you have the mantra in your mind, but also too, the more you see it as empty, the more you apply dependent arising. That's the most powerful. If you read Lama Zopa's teachings, and that takes time because we don't even understand the benefit of that. So the more you apply emptiness, the more powerful the purification. That's the real answer. But that's based upon these fundamentals of understanding your vows, living in them every day, watching your mind, having sort of self-respect, not self-hate, and then purifying as much as you can. It's sort of like the more you chop the tree, the more you chop away at the tree. In other words, you're asking me, how is there a method of more quickly chopping down the tree? Yes, do it more often. Put more effort into it. Bang it harder. Yes. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
Good,
I may as well get it over with.
Thank you, darling. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, sweetheart. Yes, people. What else? Yes, Alona. What's your question, darling?
Hello, Venerable.
Hello,
Thank you for your teaching.
Yes.
My question, my mom was visiting me from Ukraine.
Yes.
She was staying with me for a week, and it was, I had to practice a lot of watching my speech and my mouth.
Of course, we have a problem with our mummies, don't we?
Very self-centered woman, and she doesn't see much behind that. But it was a good practice. But I was looking for, my anger, my attachment, reputation was really screaming inside. And I used to use, the serenity prayer before, but as a Buddhist, I would like to know exactly which mantra I can use, because this helps me. Not
well, darling,
just watching.
I think the main thing is, I think more than a mantra, sweetheart, I think what we've got to do with our mummies, because we have such a strong karmic connection with our mother, and some of us have a lovely relationship with our mother, and some people have quite a difficult relationship. That's just the way it is, because of the past connection, So the main practice for you is, I think, when you're not with your mother, the main practice is to paint a new picture of your mother. I mean, you just said, the first thing you said was, you had difficulty because she's a very self-centered person. Well, she might be, but there are lots of other qualities there, and one of our big problems, why you're seeing her self-centeredness, because that's triggering something in you. So then why not paint another picture of your mother? And that's really the powerful meditation in the compassion wing. You start to think of the qualities, what your mother's done for you, the kindness, the fact that she gave birth to you, she fed you, she looked after you, she educated you. I mean, she didn't kill you. One of the most fundamental reasons for thanking your mother, she didn't abort you. I mean, that sounds like a joke to us. So when you start to consciously think of the good qualities, guess what? You'll paint a new picture of your mother. This is a really powerful practice. I mean, so many people do this. A friend of mine, her mother was horrible to her, mean, self-centered, nasty, horrible, unkind. And over the years, as a Buddhist, she's literally painted a new picture. And now she is there with her mother, living with her, looking after her, and loving it, because she's got a new view of her mother. So that's your main practice, to change the picture of your mother. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
That's compassion, darling, and it's very powerful wisdom. Because you see, we see everybody through the lenses of only a few states of mind. And because of this ancient connection with the mother, and your own neediness, and your own attachment, and your own hurt, you're seeing her through those lenses. And you're very cautious and fearful. So change the picture of your mother. Not when she's there, do it in the meantime in your meditations. Are you hearing me, sweetheart?
Yes. Yes.
Then you'll start to see a sad, self-centered, suffering old lady. And you'll have compassion.
Yes. Yes.
That's not easy, but that's your really powerful practice, sweetheart.
It's easier when she's not here.
Of course
but
it
when
is.
she comes in
So
front of me,
I
it's
know.
very
So
difficult.
that's when
but
you do the.
I do my best.
So you do the work when she's not there.
Okay.
That's the point. Are you hearing me?
Yes,
Good,
yes,
darling.
I do.
Wonderful.
I do. Thank you.
Good, sweetheart.
But can you recommend certain mantra when
What do you think? I
anger
mean, it's
is
obvious. What do you
present?
think? What do you think you're trying to develop? What are you trying to develop for your mother? What's the main quality you're trying to develop?
Compassion.
Well, for God's sake, do the compassion mantra. You don't need to ask. It's obvious, isn't it? Om Mani Padme Hum.
Mani Padme Hum.
Yes, sweetheart.
Oh.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Mm.
Good.
Thank you.
Good, darling.
Thank you.
All right. What else, people? Anything else? We have 15 minutes to go. Yes.
Yes,
Julia.
I have a question. Thank you, Venerable.
Yeah.
Let's say we are on the path, taking the vows or refraining from this, from these things that are disturbing our mind.
Yes.
But what if, while during our sleep, we dream that we are eating the cake,
Right, I
or
understand.
fighting with our colleague, because
Yes.
the difficult thing for me, let's say for half of the year, at least, it's been a nightmare to sleep. So it's very difficult. How can I, let's say, do it easier
I understand, darling.
thinking
So
that
this is, okay.
I would like to have the cake, but I cannot.
I know, darling, but I just find it interesting you say for quite difficulty for you for sleeping. You said half a year. What do you mean by that?
Well, maybe it's because of the heating outside also, and the crucial times we are dealing with, you know.
I see.
very,
So, I
very
mean, this might sound, this is not an answer you expected, but I mean, there's Tibetans have a system, and there's a system in the West called geomancy, and the Chinese call it Feng Shui. Have you ever applied any of these principles to your life? Because the Tibetans have I don't know what they call it, but there's a much more subtle understanding of the way the external environment impacts upon us. So even the way you sleep, I mean, the Chinese Feng Shui it's called, and lots of people do this all the time now. And Lama Zopa, he often recommends people consult Feng Shui because they have it in Tibetan as well. And in the West, we call it geomancy. So certainly one of them, this is not joking, you should experiment. If you have a thought for this kind of thing, maybe you think it's ridiculous. But if you look up on the internet for your Kwa number, have you ever heard of this? Have you heard of it?
Yes, Marius gave us the trick.
Oh, okay. Have you tried the method of putting your head in the right direction for your sleeping? Have you tried that?
No, not yet. But,
Why don't you
I
try?
will take your advice.
Honey, all you can do is experiment. There's a friend of mine who's a monk, and he's a Feng Shui expert, and he goes around the world advising people. He said, Rabina, in the beginning I was so cynical I couldn't believe it. Lama Zopa recommended he learn it. And now he's a consultant. And he said, all I know is it works. So, I mean, it fits if we understand karma and the more subtle levels of things. But so if Marius has already told you, I would suggest you give that a try. But as Lama Zopa says, karma first, then Feng Shui. And if karma, so maybe, see, sometimes with sleep, because our mind is at the more subtle level, we often can have really bad experiences. We can be offended. We can be harmed by other spirits. Do you feel it's other beings harming you? Do you think it's like beings, actual spirits? That could be very possible. Do you think it's something like that? Do you feel the presence of other beings harming you? Or is it just like nightmares? What is it?
No, I don't have this kind of nightmares. I just have to refrain from everything during the day, and then during the sleep, when your mind is free, then you can have the cake and maybe go to the party.
Well, and darling, maybe it's okay. Maybe then what you've got to decide, instead of having the fear of trying to be a good girl, you're being too tight with yourself, then maybe, so, for example, the view in Tantra, as Cosmin asked, are there different levels? There are different levels. And so the more advanced levels of practice, which is related to Tantra and which is related to visualizing the different Buddhas like Tara and Chenrezig, the view there is, you enjoy and you offer it. You just think, okay, I'm having fun in my dreams. Does it feel very light and spacious and pleasant, or does it feel very neurotic in the dreams?
I always take the advantages, so I don't know if it's good or bad.
What do you mean take advantage?
I always want to enjoy life,
Okay,
and that's
then. But you see,
the dream.
I hear you. This is very interesting, Julia. You see, the point is, okay, in the beginning, if let's say you decide you're going to, you've got a tendency to get diabetes, in the beginning, refraining from sugar, which you really like, it's quite hard, isn't it? It's quite painful, isn't it? Because you want the sugar, isn't it? But if you know, again, this is the point, when you know the advantages of living in morality, not eating too much cake, not jumping on too many boys or whatever you fancy, you've got to know the advantages of it, not just out of guilt and tightness. That's what I'm saying to, what's his name, Flavio. You've got to know the advantages and know that eventually it will bring joy. When your body is more calm, when your mind is more familiar with not eating the sugar, your mind will be very joyful. So you can kind of look forward to the joy. In the beginning, it's quite tight. But nothing wrong with joy. We need more joy. But in the beginning, it's a bit tight. But eventually, you'll be happy to live in vows. You will get pleasure from that because you're being virtuous. And the real joy comes when our mind is virtuous, not just from the short-term attachment. So you've got to be more patient with yourself and know that joy will come. And if you do have it in your dreams, then enjoy it and be happy and offer it. Offer it to the Buddha and be more relaxed about it. Don't be guilty.
Yes, thank you very much.
What do you think? Does that sound reasonable?
I can.
Good.
I can.
You enjoy and offer it. Think, oh, good, I had a pleasant dream.
Thank you.
May I offer this joy? May I experience this joy all the time without needing the cake? Do you understand?
Yes.
Good, darling. Good, Julia. Thank you. What else, people? Sweethearts? A few more minutes to go. Anything there? Any more questions in the chat, Anna or Doina? No, nothing. Well, sweethearts, I don't know. So I think I think I'll start talking about purification. We've got a few minutes. Then we can continue it next week, okay? So the general approach in this first stages of practice in the Lamrim, the essence of it is to abide by the laws of karma, as they put it. Abide by the laws of ethics. Then you have to ask the question, why? So if you're a Christian, it's because God said. This would be good for Flavio. Maybe Flavio is really a Christian. Maybe he likes doing it because God said. I don't know. That's for Flavio to find out. But if you're a Buddhist, the reason to not kill and not steal and not lie and not jump on too many girls or boys or whatever it is you fancy is they are actions that harm others. That's a fact. But that's not the reason that Buddha exhorts us to refrain from them. The reason Buddha exhorts us to refrain from killing, stealing, raping, etc., etc., is because, Rabina, sweetheart, he's saying, because these actions will sow seeds in your mind that will ripen as your future suffering like that. It's a very simple answer, but in the way is all this guilt and neurosis and bad, and someone said I should do it, I'm naughty. That gets in the way, but it's very clear. So we're remembering that repeatedly. So remember the benefits of refraining from negative actions. Then you decide you want to take refuge and formalize your commitment to being a Buddhist. So maybe, no, I won't talk about purification. Let me talk about refuge first. Because then we take vows once we've taken refuge. So taking refuge is just this step that you take when you've decided, you've checked on the Buddha's teachings, you like the Buddha's teachings, you know, it makes sense to you, you've checked up on the Buddha, and you decide you want to formalize your commitment to becoming a Buddhist. So this is the little ceremony, you know, that one would do, what you would engage in. You'd ask one of your teachers, you'd ask a person you like, or if you work like part of the center, you might ask the center, can we do refuge? And then the center could ask somebody to do it, you know. Then the commitment, you're half a dozen commitments. You're committing to say, you know, to rely upon the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what's the Buddha? Well, Buddha is the word we use to refer to Shakyamuni Buddha, the founding Buddha in India 2,500 years ago. That's the relative Buddha. But they also talk about the absolute Buddha. So the actual Buddha, the meaning of that word, the Buddha himself, the human body, the human form, the one like behind me, that's the relative Buddha. But the actual Buddha, they call it the absolute Buddha. That's the word is referring to enlightened mind. So it's a bit like the teachings in Christianity about God, you know. the conscious energy of God is everywhere. It is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-wise. That's the energy of Buddha, and everybody can become one of those. So that's the actual Buddha. But what good is that to us? We need the Buddha to manifest in a human body, and he can talk to us and give us his advice, which is the advice he took to become a Buddha. So the absolute Buddha is the actual enlightened mind, and then out of compassion, that mind manifests in a human body. This form behind us, that's the relative Buddha. So how you develop confidence in the Buddha is by reading, by thinking about him, listening to his story, reading his teachings. So then you have confidence, you rely upon his teachings. So the actual Dharma, the absolute Dharma, is the actual knowledge in that mind. It's a bit like you use the example of Bach, you know. The actual music is in Bach's mind. He could not write one single note of music on a piece of paper. That's the relative Dharma, the words that Buddha speaks. But the absolute Dharma is the knowledge in the mind of the Buddha. The knowledge, I'm just using music as an analogy. The music, the actual music is in Bach's mind. But what does he do out of kindness? We can't access his mind. So he writes these weird notations on a piece of paper, and that's called the musical notation. That's the words, that's the Dharma, that's the relative Dharma that we rely upon most. You can have 57 Buddhas looking at you very handsome every day. If they don't open their mouths, you have nothing. You have to have the advice. That's the actual refuge. That's the power of speech, as I said before. Then you've got the absolute Sangha and the relative spiritual community. Well, the absolute Sangha is anybody who's realized emptiness, an Arya being, they call it, a superior being who's cut the root of all suffering. They've still got more work to do. So anybody from the first second you've realized emptiness all the way up to a Buddha, they're all called the superior beings, Arya being. That's the actual spiritual community. But you don't recognize anybody. It could be the homeless person down the road, but you can't tell. So then there's the relative Sangha, and that's the ordained monks and nuns, who are living in the fullness of the vows that Buddha teaches in his Vinaya. That's the actual Sangha. And in fact, the Buddha's teaching is that the existence of the Dharma in one place is the criterion of the existence of the living Dharma in one place, is the presence in that place of at least 4 fully ordained people. That's why there's always this story I tell. I don't know the origins of it properly, but at some point there was some king in Tibet who didn't like the Dharma and was killing all the Sangha or whatever, trying to destroy the Dharma. And at some point they were running out of a quota of monks. They never had full ordination for nuns in Tibet. It never went there. So they were running out of the quota. You need at least 10 people, I think, for an ordination for more monks. So they had to get some monk from across the border in China to come over the border so they could have the quota, so they could have an ordination and keep the Sangha alive in Tibet. So out of respect for that guy, they must have worn blue. We have this blue thing here. Can you see this blue? A little bit of piping on our robes. That's out of respect to that Chinese monk. That's what I've heard. So there's the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So that's what we rely upon. And we commit to that. So we do a little prayer every morning, every night. You commit to that. Then you commit to, try to make offerings every day. That's why it's good to have an altar, and you make your water bowl offerings like I've got on my altar. You can learn that. Then you try to remember to offer the first mouthful of your food and drink, at least the first mouthful, to the 3 jewels, your little prayer where you offer. It helps cut attachment. You try to be kind to sentient beings. You try to study a little bit the Dharma every day. There's a half a dozen little commitments like that. Then after the refuge, often at the same time, or sometimes another day, you would take the 5 lay vows, the 5 lay person vows. So that's the vows, and that's refuge. And that'll do for today. Then next week we can go over these points again and answer any questions you have, and then we'll talk about purification. All right, precious people. Anna, Doina, and whoever's there. Doina's not there now. Oh, there she is. Okay, darling, so we just say our little prayer here just to finish, all right? And we'd be so delighted, we'd be happy that we've done this together. And not that we don't need to do that. We just do the dedication. Keep going. We don't need to do that. Keep going. This one, yes. They're right there. Go back. Go back. One prayer. Go back. This one and the next one. Exactly. Dedication prayers. That's it. So we'll just do these 2 little prayers and just look at the meaning of the words. We're having these thoughts. So we're thinking the first one. So, as a result of this hour and a half together, thinking like this, as many moments as there have been, as many seeds we have planted. So how marvelous. And so all the virtuous karmic seeds we've planted in our mind, we'd be so delighted. As a result of these, may they ripen in the future, just as we motivated, as my becoming a Buddha. So then I'm qualified to lead all beings to enlightenment. That's what we're saying, Gewadi nyududag lama sange drugyone drowa chikyang malupa dei sala gopashog. And now the next one. This is the prayer that, like as you say, it's saying, may the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta. We haven't talked about Bodhicitta because that doesn't relate to karma, but it does. This amazing aspiration that's the result of compassion, that is this determination to never give up wanting to benefit others and never give up becoming a Buddha yourself, no matter how many lifetimes it takes, so that you can lead all beings to enlightenment. So may that which has not arisen in the minds of beings, may it arise and may it grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Jangchob semchog rinpoche makye panam kegyo chig kye panyampa mepa yang gongne gongdu pelba shog. That's it, darling people. Take the picture away so I can see everybody. There you go. Okay, sweethearts. Happy to see you all. So happy to see you all. Thank you, Donna, darling. Thank you so much, everybody. Barbara, Celia, Alona, Anna, Radu, Ramona, I can't see, but I think I know who it is. And then Veronica and Mary and Ramona again and Manuel. And then there was also Anna's there. There's Anna. Everybody. Cosmin, Flavio, Sula, all of you. Okay? Barbara, every single person. Much, much love, and never give up. And hopefully we'll all still be alive in 7 days' time. Okay? Keep moving. Much love. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Venerable.
Okay, darling.
Thank you, Venerable.